So here's my story. On paper, I was supposed to succeed. I was a straight A student, a top-ranked consultant, and I was speaking on stage in front of hundreds in my tech job. But none of that really lasted because I kept leaving. I kept starting over. Over time, I started to notice a gap because while I was choosing change, everyone else was compounding. Their careers were deepening, their networks were expanding, and their relationships were stabilizing. Well, you might be asking, well, why did you quit? And honestly, I didn't understand that until recently, which was that my nervous system wasn't compatible with those environments I was in. And along my own healing and growth journey, I've realized how common this is, that so many people have been struggling to fit in places that weren't designed for them, weren't designed for their nervous system. And if you've been feeling like you're swimming upstream while everyone else just glides along, this is something to consider. And so in this video, I want to share with you some ways that this can appear, and perhaps they might shed some light into your own life. So I'll start with a story. In 2009, I started a PhD program in Berkeley, California. I had a full scholarship and, in addition, living stipends. I was essentially getting paid to go to school. And the first couple years of our program, we took classes. And I loved my classes. I did super well. I loved the material. I liked the people that I was going to school with. But then things started to change around year 3 when we started to do research. And the contrast was stark. Instead of being in these kind of social, engaging environments, I was now by myself in the basement of a lab. And I literally couldn't keep my eyes open. It was agonizing. And in order to just get by, I started picking up hobbies, cycling, windsurfing. I even got a dog. And I thought to myself, well, this is just what it is. I just have to try harder. I'm just not doing enough. And meanwhile, my friend Paul, who we started together, I swear I could time my watch by when he went to lunch. I would be sitting at my desk. I see him walk by. I'm like, oh, it's noon. And that's when I started to think, wow, there are people that can just be so steady and regular. And I'm not one of them. And so maybe I'm not cut out for this. And eventually I got my master's and I quit the PhD program. And at the time that I quit, I told myself that, you know what, I need to follow my own path. This is not what I meant to do. But what I didn't realize at the time, it's not that I couldn't do it. It wasn't about how hard I was trying. I didn't fundamentally understand my nervous system and my cognitive profile. And this only became clear a few weeks ago when I got my ADHD diagnosis. And what I learned is that my nervous system behaves very differently than someone like Paul's. So you probably know the children's story of the tortoise versus the hare. And the moral of that story is that you want to be like the tortoise, that slow and steady wins the race. And so our world, our society, is built for tortoises. Our organizations reward people who are consistent, reliable, and dependable. I mean, look at all the content out there. Everyone says the answer to success is consistency and discipline. But what about those of us that are wired differently or have experienced trauma and loss in our lives that affect our ability? If we don't know that we are trying to compete with a handicap, then what happens is that we see ourselves struggling without a clear, obvious answer why. So then we blame ourselves that there's something broken about us, that we're not doing enough, we're lazy, we're not trying hard enough, we're not disciplined enough. whatever those shame stories are. But the reality is that people with neurodivergence, trauma, high sensitivity, we've been working extra hard to regulate ourselves in order to fit in. We've been trying to run the race carrying invisible weight. So with ADHD, that often looks like using anxiety or shame just to get ourselves to start on a task. And people with trauma, their nervous systems get dysregulated, which then causes collapse and inconsistency. And high sensitivity, that looks like masking, hiding one's authentic self just in order to fit in at work and at school. So not only are we trying to do the same external work as everyone else, we're also doing all this inner work just to stay regulated. And it's not like we can't do it. We absolutely can. We can be very high functioning. And in reality, a lot of people with neurodivergence and trauma become high performers. They become overachievers because they've had to outwork everyone their entire lives. But that extra effort has a cost. It's expensive and becomes unsustainable. So imagine that you're running your system at 90% capacity while everyone else is only at 70%. If there is a unanticipated disturbance, a perturbation, perhaps you sleep poorly for a few nights, or see something really disturbing in the news, or have an argument with a friend, that additional stress can push your system over the edge into collapse. Whereas someone else that isn't operating at that capacity, they have that additional bandwidth to absorb it, and they're able to bounce back more quickly without losing all their momentum. Then what happens after we crash? Well, we think, damn it, I messed up. It's my fault that I couldn't keep up. I couldn't handle that stress. Or I need to do better at whatever. And so we put the pressure on ourselves. And it works for a little bit, but it's just really more control. And control can never be perfect. And so then we continue this cycle of effort and collapse, and then having to start over again and again. And so the non-obvious solution to all of this starts with actually trying to do less. It starts with some self-compassion, to acknowledge how hard we've been working, how tired we are, and to accept the possibility that it's not our fault. It's not up to our own efforting and struggling to succeed. That there may be some real limitations that had never anything to do with us and our choices. That the way that we were born, our genetics, the environment that we were raised, that they have significant impact on how the rest of our lives unfold. And this is a pivotal shift, because if we're so focused on our own efforting as the bottleneck and as the solution to our problems, then that blinds us from seeing the actual problem. And as I've said before, if the problem keeps repeating, then it's systemic. And so we must look for systemic solutions. And this process feels like softening our grip. And in the beginning, that might feel scary. Like, what will happen if I don't try to control so much? Will things fall apart? Will I be a failure? Will people hate me? And if you're able to sit with that, if you're able to be present with yourself and breathe, perhaps you'll notice that there is an opening to a deeper peace, to a deeper sense of trust and safety. And the other emotion that can arise in this process is grief. When we see our patterns, when we see how far back they go, there's the thought of, I wish I'd known earlier. because that would have saved me so much pain, confusion, and shame. The realization that I'm not broken, that there's an explanation for all of this. If only someone had told me. If only someone had helped me when I needed them. Life could have turned out differently, or at least not so difficult. If this resonates with you, I just want to say welcome, that you're not alone in it. And I hope that helps a little. Because there are so many people struggling without understanding of why. And that's what I'm trying to do here in this channel. And if you want to support this work, please leave a comment, because that will encourage me to make more content like this. And it'll help other people feel seen as well. Okay. And take care.